The challenge in the hall, the great hall of the Galactic Assembly, shimmered under the cold white glow of crystal lights. Dozens of alien leaders sat in curved rows, their robes and armor flashing in every color of the spectrum, holographic. Banners of different empires hung in the air, shifting and rippling as if they were alive. Every voice in the room was tense, except one. The voice belonged to General Kyver, commander of the Varic Legion. His scaled face split into a cruel smile as he leaned forward. His eyes locked on the human woman standing in the center of the chamber. "You humans," he said, his tone thick with mockery. "You are soft, fragile creatures, unfit for war." A low rumble of laughter rolled through the hall, bouncing off the crystal walls. Some delegates smirked. Others shook their heads in pity. Only the human woman's eyes stayed calm. Her name was Captain Mara Vance, and she didn't flinch. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she let the silence stretch. Every second made the laughter fade, replaced by a restless stillness. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "Do you remember Veridan Prime?" she asked. The words hit the air like a sudden drop in temperature. The laughter died completely. Kyver's smile faltered for a heartbeat, but then returned. "I have fought in many wars, human," he said. "If I remembered every small world I conquered, my mind would drown in unimportant details." His words were meant to cut, to dismiss her, but Mara didn't react. Her eyes stayed locked on him, cold and unshaken. "You should remember," she said softly, "because that was the war you didn't win." A murmur spread across the assembly. Several alien leaders leaned forward. Curious, Mara could see their expressions shift from boredom to interest. Even the council chair, a towering insectoid, with shimmering wings, tilted its head. This was no ordinary defense. She was not here to plead for herself. Kyver laughed again, though it was tighter now. "You speak boldly for someone accused of disobeying orders during a joint operation," he said. "That is why you stand here, to answer for your reckless actions, not to tell war stories." Mara took a slow step forward, her boots clicking on the polished black floor. "I'm not here to tell stories," she said. "I'm here to remind you of the truth." The large holoscreens above the assembly flashed. With her name, her rank, and the charges against her, they called her defiant, unpredictable, dangerous. But none of those words showed the whole picture. None of them showed the siege of Veridan Prime. None of them showed the night Kyver had failed. "You mock humanity," Mara said, her voice rising slightly. "You think we are weak because we don't seek war, because we value life more than conquest." She stopped just a few feet from him now. "But there's something you need to remember, General." She leaned forward slightly, her words like a blade slipping between armor plates. "You scarred me that day, but you didn't break me." Kyver's jaw tightened. For the first time, he didn't have a ready insult. The assembly could feel the tension in the air. It was no longer the formal rhythm of accusations and defense. This was something deeper, something personal. "Do you think you frighten me, human?" Kyver finally growled. "I have faced fleets that blotted out suns. I have walked through the ruins of 1,000 worlds." Mara didn't move back. "I'm not here to frighten you," she said. "I'm here to finish what you started." Sharp intake of breath swept the chamber. Delegates looked between the two, sensing that the calm, polite mask of diplomacy was gone. This was not just a hearing. It was the opening shot of a war between two warriors, one bound by pride, the other by memory. The council chair's voice buzzed through the air. "Captain Vance, you will explain your claim against the general." "I will," Mara said, "but not with words alone." She turned to the assembly, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "Before I speak, you need to see something." Her hand moved to the seal of her uniform. Slowly, she unfastened the top layer, peeling back the jacket. The bright lights caught the pale line running across her ribs. A long, jagged scar. It was the kind of scar left by an energy blade, deep and burning, Several gasps echoed from the seats above. "This," Mara said, her voice steady, "is the gift your war left me?" She turned back to Caver, eyes sharp as steel. "You gave me this, but you didn't take the tunnels. You didn't take the city, and you didn't win." The hall went utterly silent. Caver's claws flexed against the edge of the table. He could feel every eye on him. The scar was proof undeniable, unerasable, and the human who carried it was still standing. Somewhere deep in his chest, a memory stirred flashes of fire, the stubborn resistance of a human unit, and the young soldier who refused to die. Now she stood here again, in front of him, and for the first time in many years, General Caver felt something unfamiliar. It wasn't anger. It was the beginning of doubt. Shadows of Veridonth. Memory came back to her like a wave of fire. And smoke, Veridon Prime, the outer rim world that became a graveyard. It had been a green jewel, once forests thick as walls, rivers wide enough to hide whole ships, cities built into the cliffside canyons. But when the Varic Legion came, they turned the sky red. It began with the bombing runs. The sound shook the bones of the planet. Civilians screamed in the streets as plasma fire tore through the upper towers. Whole districts vanished in seconds. The air smelled of burning metal and ash. The human command had ordered all forces to stay away. Veridon was too deep in enemy territory. But Mara's squad, barely a dozen soldiers, didn't listen. They were young, stubborn, and too angry to sit in safety while millions begged for help. Their landing was chaos from the first second. The dropship came down hard, scraping against a collapsing tower. Inside the cabin, Mara gripped her rifle until her knuckles went white. When the side doors opened, the heat hit like a wall. The street ahead was filled with fleeing families, carrying only what they could hold. "We secure the tunnel exits," her squad leader shouted. It was their only plan: protect the underground routes where the last civilians were hiding. The tunnels were deep, carved out during old mining days. They could keep people safe, but only if the enemy didn't find them. Kava's voice came over the open combs that first night, cold, amused, and certain, to the human insects hiding in the dirt. "You will starve before the third dawn." His soldiers were already closing in, armored shapes moving like shadows between the burning buildings. Mara's squad fought for every block. Every corner became a barricade, every window a sniper post. They had no reinforcements, no air support, and almost no food. But they had something the Varic didn't understand. They were fighting for people they could touch, faces they could see, children they could shield with their own bodies. The first breach came at dawn on the second day. Enemy troops forced their way into the eastern tunnel entrance. Mara was there, pulling 2 children back behind cover when the energy blade found her. It cut across her ribs, the heat searing through flesh and bone. Her legs almost gave out. She could barely breathe. But when she saw Caver's soldiers pushing forward, she stood again, firing until her rifle clicked empty. The wound burned. The blood soaked her uniform. But the enemy didn't take the tunnels. They didn't take the civilians. And when Caver gave the order to pull back hours later, she heard the frustration in his voice, even through the static. The sky was black when the final dropships of survivors left Veridon. Mara lay in the dirt, barely conscious. Her squad leader knelt beside her, pressing a shaking hand to the wound. "You're not done yet, soldier," he told her. And she wasn't. Back in the present, standing in the Galactic Assembly, she remembered every sound, every smell, every scream. Kava remembered too, though he would never admit it here. The scar was only the surface of what she carried. The real wound was the truth that the Varic Legion had failed. And now the galaxy was about to hear that truth. Asterisk. The scar that speaks. The great hall was so silent that Mara could hear the faint hum of the crystal lights above. Every pair of eyes was locked on her, some wide with shock, others narrowed in suspicion. The scar across her ribs gleamed pale. Under the lights, a harsh line of truth carved into flesh. "This," she said slowly, her voice steady as stone, "is what your war left me." She turned, making sure every delegate could see the mark. "It's not a medal, not a story told in taverns, not a song sung by bards." Her gaze locked on Caver. "It's a reminder of the day you failed." A ripple of murmurs ran through the seats. The insectoid council chair clicked its mandibles. Together, its voice sharp. "General Caver, do you recognize this claim?" Caver leaned forward, his scaled hands gripping the table until his claws scraped the surface. "I recognize nothing," he growled, though the tension in his jaw betrayed him. "She spins lies, dressing old wounds in new colors." His voice was meant to sound certain, but it carried a thin crack that Mara heard clearly. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. "You told the galaxy you took Viridin Prime," she said, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "You told them the civilians never escaped, that the tunnels were buried, that your forces crushed us." Her lips curled in a cold smile. "But I was there, Cavor. I saw your soldiers retreat. I saw you give the order to fall back." Gasps scattered through the audience. Some delegates exchanged glances. Others turned toward Caver with faint looks of doubt. A few even smiled. As if enjoying the sight of the arrogant war hero being cornered, Mara took a step closer, her boots echoing in the stillness. "You can knock me all you want," she said, "but this scar speaks louder than your words." She placed her hand on her side, fingers brushing the pale line. "It says you couldn't finish what you started." Caver's eyes narrowed, a low growl building in his throat. "You think this hall will believe you over me?" he asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. "I don't need them to believe me," Mara said, her tone calm but razor-sharp. "I just need them to remember that sometimes humans don't break." The council chair raised a hand, signaling for silence. "Captain Vance," it said, "do you have proof to support your claim?" Mara's answer was a small, knowing smile. "Yes," she said, "and you're going to watch it." A faint hum filled the air as she tapped her wrist console. Above the assembly, the massive holoscreens flickered to life. Static crackled, then cleared. The image of Viridin Prime appeared, burning towers, screaming civilians, and soldiers in black armor running through the smoke. "This is your army, General," Mara said, and this is the moment they ran. The recording froze on Caver's own face as he shouted the retreat order. His voice unmistakable. The hall erupted, some shouting in outrage, others in disbelief, a few even laughing in shock. Caver's face darkened, his claws curling into fists. He had built his reputation on that battle, and now the truth stood naked before the galaxy. Mara didn't look away from him, not even for a second. "This scar is mine," she said softly, "but the shame is yours." Asterisk. The truth beneath the glory. The hall was in chaos. Delegates spoke over one another, their voices rising like a storm of whispers and accusations. Some demanded an investigation. Others shouted that the evidence was forged. But no one could ignore the frozen Hala image of General Caver ordering the retreat. Caver rose from his seat, towering over the table. His scaled fists slammed down, making the crystal surface hum. "This is a fabrication," he roared, his voice echoing against the high walls. "The humans twist records. They corrupt files to humiliate their betters." Mara stood still in the center of the chamber, her hands folded behind her back. Her voice, in contrast, was calm and deliberate. "This file was recovered from your own battle archives," she said. "It's stamped with your Legion's encryption, your voice print, your command seal." She turned slightly toward the delegates. "Your people guarded it so well they forgot the truth inside it." Several council members murmured in agreement. An elder from the Ocean Confederacy leaned forward, his long silver whiskers twitching. "If the data is real," he said, "then Viridin Prime was not a victory. It was a retreat." Caver's jaw clenched, the ridges along his neck flaring in visible anger. You sit in safety and speak of retreat while I bled on 100 battlefields. He spat. Mara didn't blink. I bled too, she said quietly, and I didn't lie about it. Her words struck like a quiet hammer. The hall went still again. Mara stepped closer to the central podium, her boots clicking against the black stone floor. She turned her gaze from Caver to the entire assembly. This is not just about she said. This is about every soldier, human or alien, who was told their sacrifice didn't matter, so a commander could polish his legend. Caver tried to speak again, but this time the chair's voice cut through his. General, remain silent until called, the insectoid leader said, its wings trembling with irritation. Mara tapped her wrist console again. The hala shifted now, showing survivors from Veridon Prime, civilians of many species, giving recorded testimony. A child's voice described the human soldiers standing in the tunnels, refusing to move even when the walls shook. An old miner told of the moment Caver's troops pulled back, leaving them alive. And finally, a soldier's helmet cam played the moment Mara, bleeding, barely standing, fired until her rifle was empty, holding the line. The assembly's mood shifted. Some who had mocked her earlier now looked at her with a mixture of respect and unease. The legend of General Caver was crumbling in real time, and Mara could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. When the recordings ended, the lights returned to full brightness. Mara faced him once more. You can keep your titles, your medals, your empty victories, she said, but you can't keep the truth from finding you. Caver's voice was low now, almost a growl. You've made an enemy you cannot defeat, human. Mara allowed herself the faintest smile. You already said that once, she replied. And I'm still here, asterisk. The war we kindled the assembly dismissed for the day, but the air in the great hall stayed heavy. Whispers followed Mara as she walked out. Some voices carried respect, others carried warning. She had humiliated a war hero before the galaxy, and war heroes did not forget. In the private corridors of the Varic delegation wing, Caver stood alone. His claws tapped against the wall, as if marking the rhythm of his thoughts. The defeat in the assembly was a wound deeper than any blade. But unlike a scar, this wound could still be avenged. Contact the Shadow Fleet, he ordered into his. Come, his voice low and dangerous. The officer on the other end hesitated. Sir? Assembly law forbids. Do it, Caver snapped, his tone sharp enough to cut steel. Far away, Mara boarded her ship, the Resolute. The crew greeted her with smiles, some offering quiet congratulations for the assembly confrontation. She nodded, but her mind stayed on Veridon. That battle was over, but the weight of it still pressed on her chest. She didn't notice the faint blinking signal hidden deep in the ship's maintenance log. Caver's orders spread through the underbelly of the galaxy. A price was set for the capture or death of Captain Mara Vance, not a public bounty, but a shadow price enough to make mercenaries and pirate fleets change their course. The message was simple. She lives, I lose. Mara's next mission was a supply run to a remote human outpost near the Rift Belt. It was supposed to be a low-risk operation. Her crew stocked the cargo bays with medical crates, ration pods, and water units. They joked about the easy trip. None of them saw the encrypted pings bouncing between distant ships. None of them knew the Rift Belt was already closing around them like a net. That night, Mara stood alone on the observation deck. Stars drifted past in slow, endless motion. Her fingers traced the line of her scar beneath her uniform. The cold glass reflected her face, and for a moment, the faint outline of Caver's shadow standing behind her in memory. She turned, but the deck was empty. Back in the dark reaches of space, a formation of black-hulled ships glided silently. Their hulls absorbed starlight. Their engines burned. Cold, Caver's flagship led the way. This was not an official fleet. It was a hunting party, and the prey was heading straight toward them. Asterisk, Battle in the rift belt spread before them like a black ocean filled with jagged icebergs. Of rock, asteroids drifted in slow, silent patterns, their shadows swallowing whole sections of space. The Resolute slid between them, her engines humming at low power. To Mara, it felt like walking through a graveyard. The first warning came as a faint pulse on the long-range scanner. Multiple contacts, the navigator whispered. Mara's eyes narrowed. They're not broadcasting IDs, she said. That meant one thing: they weren't here to talk. Kaver's fleet emerged from behind the largest asteroid, black holes gleaming under the faint light of the rift's dying star. They fanned out, boxing the Resolute in. Kaver's voice cut through the cones. Captain Vance, the assembly can't save you here. Her crew looked to her, some pale, some gripping their stations as if the consoles could protect them. Mara stood tall, her mind already working through the map of the rift in her head. The asteroids were dangerous, but also a weapon. If used right, kill the lights, drop the shields, she ordered. The crew stared in shock. Do it, she said firmly. In seconds, the ship went dark, her heat signature fading into the background of the cold rocks. Kaver's ships closed. In, their sensors searching. He expected her to run. She didn't. Using only thruster bursts, Mara slid the Resolute into the shadow of a massive asteroid. She watched on the scope as two of Kaver's smaller ships drifted past her hiding. Spot, on my mark? Fire the starboard clamps, she whispered. The magnetic clamps grabbed a floating slab of rock the size of a house. She released it into the path of the lead pursuer. The rock spun, crashing into its hull, tearing metal like paper. One ship gone, 6 to go. Kaver snarled over the coms. Clever, but not enough. His main guns lit up the darkness, carving chunks out of the asteroid cover. Mara darted between the debris, using each blast as a distraction to change position. Then she saw it, a cluster of unstable ore floating near the rift's edge. One shot could set it off like a chain of bombs. Target the ore, she ordered. The gunner hesitated. But we're in range too. Fire, she said, her voice like steel. The explosion ripped through the rift, shockwaves slamming against every hull. Kaver's flagship spun out of formation, its shields flickering. Smoke and fire bled. Into the cold black, Mara opened the com channel, her voice calm. Round 2. And you're losing again. Asterisk victory without apology. Kaver's flagship drifted in the rift's shadow. Fires burned along its hull, small bursts of oxygen venting into the void. Inside the Resolute, the crew watched their scopes as the enemy. Ships fell back, one by one. Mara stood at the command chair, calm, her eyes fixed on the crippled flagship. Shall we finish them, Captain? Her weapons officer asked. The silence on the bridge was heavy, everyone waiting for her word. She shook her head slowly. No, she said. We're not here to erase them. We're here to make sure they live with what happened. She opened a channel to the flagship, her voice echoing through Kaver's damaged bridge. This is the second time you've tried to break me, she said, and the second time you failed. Kaver glared at her image on his cracked display. You could kill me now, he growled. I could, she replied, but death would only make you a martyr. Living will make you a warning. The com link cut, and Mara turned to her crew. Plot a course back to assembly space, she ordered. The Resolute moved away, her engines glowing against the darkness. Behind them, Kaver's ship remained adrift, every scar on its hull a reminder to the galaxy that the Varick warlord had been beaten again by a human. News of the battle spread before they even reached safe space. Footage of the fight played across countless channels. The image of Mara, standing calm against Kaver's rage, became a symbol. To humans, it was proof of resilience. To the rest of the galaxy, it was a reminder that underestimating humanity came with a price. Later, in the quiet of her quarters, Mara stood before the small mirror bolted to the wall. She unfastened her jacket and touched the pale scar along her ribs. It no longer felt like a wound. It felt like armor. She smiled faintly. Some battles were won with weapons. Others were won by refusing to fall. And in that moment, she knew Kaver would never stop hating her. And she would never stop making him regret the day they met. Asterisk.